even if a quantum computer was capable of taking those coins, I don't think it would be economical, even at 50 Bitcoin. So what do you do with these Satoshi's coins? Do we burn them? That's something that Isabel advocates for. Mike Casey and I have collaborated and worked on a solution called Hourglass. The distinction between nuts and core is that it's just relay policy. Or what nuts people call the filters, right? This is just relay policy. It's what your personal mempool looks like. It doesn't affect what goes in on chain. That all goes to miners, and so, like, in my opinion, they don't matter. The only thing that matters are fees. Fees are the best filter. The whole fiat system is just incredibly dysfunctional when you come down to it. But what's nice about Bitcoin is that tectonics block. You know, it's our lifeboat, and that's why I dedicated my career to working on Bitcoin.
Hi, Hunter. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming here. Before we get started, maybe give a few people that listen and that don't know you and aren't aware of like what you're doing, a little bit of an overview of who are you and like what are you doing in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I go by CryptoQuick. I chose that name in 2005, and I used it on Freenode. And then I bought the domain CryptoQuick.com in 2009. I hadn't heard of Bitcoin, and even though it had come out that same year. I think the first time I heard about Bitcoin was like in 4chan or something. But I remember downloading it and just not knowing what to do with it. Because like I had it on my laptop and I just didn't. It like if you don't mine or buy, like it doesn't click. And so later on I'd start working on databases professionally. I worked on a time series NoSQL database called InfluxDB, and that kind of made me think of Bitcoin as just like a really inefficient database. I didn't really understand the monetary use case, essentially. And in 2017, I got into Web3. There's ETH Denver is a popular conference where I'm from, and so big Web3 crowd there. And in 2021 I found a job working on the Filecoin protocol. I'm a Rust developer. I've been writing Rust since 2018, and they needed a Rust version of the protocol. And I had a number of friends who were just telling me, like, you need to read the Bitcoin Standard. And so I read it, and I was only like a month into my job. And after reading that, it kind of changed my perspective on a lot of things. And I became like really hard to work around. And so later that year I'd focus fully on more on like Bitcoin. I was really excited about layers like Lightning and RGB, and in the next year I joined a company called Diba, where I'd work on the Bitmask wallet and work closely with the RGB team as well. And in last year, I needed to pivot, and so I focused on what I think is probably the one of the bigger problems in Bitcoin, which is the threat that quantum computers could pose to it. And I started a startup called Surmount Systems, and that would be where I write the first draft of what would become BIP 360. and we've rewritten it several times since then. I think it's like the third or fourth time, and it's we wrote it, I think, hopefully for the last time, with the help of my coworker and just I would call her a professional peer, Isabel Foxen-Duke, and then also my co-author is Ethan Hallman. He joined earlier this year, and really reshaped how the direction of the BIP. Earlier, the BIP was sort of like not as aligned in how like core devs like to do things, and Ethan, with his experience and background, he lives in Boston. He's a cryptographer. He lives he works for Cloudflare, but he's on their post-quantum cryptography team, and he engages with the Bitcoin mailing list regularly. Yeah, he helped kind of align the BIP in a better direction, and hopefully it'll have more chances of success. BIP 360 essentially is I like to say it like it makes Bitcoin more quantum resistant. Bitcoin is already largely quantum resistant. 2/3 of the supply is held in addresses that are public key hashes. Those are fine. What you got to worry about are Satoshi's coins. There's 1.7 million PK coins. Satoshi's coins are principal among them, but not all of them. And what we think of Satoshi's coins are essentially like according to what Locke calls the Patoshi pattern. Or actually, I don't know if he found the Patoshi pattern originally, but he wrote about it in one of his blog posts. It's really good. I think it was like, was Satoshi a greedy miner? And it turns out Satoshi was not a greedy miner. He had a specially configured miner that like would kind of like let other people mine if he wasn't mining, sort of. And and let's see. Essentially, BIP 360, what it does is it fixes a flaw in Taproot. So Taproot, I mean, I hesitate to call it a flaw because it's really nice, it's really neat. But like as we head into a world where elliptic curve cryptography is no longer secure, and we can't rely on it for securing value long term, or at least having an exposed public key, right? That could be a really big problem, because quantum computers could take a public key and turn it into a private key. That's the theory anyway. Excuse me. And so, what's nice about Taproot is that so Taproot, there's 2 ways to spend from a Taproot address. You put coins into it, and there's the Keypath spend, which allows you to make use of what's called signature aggregation and Schnorr signatures, and that's really nice, because like you can put as many signatures as you want into a 64-byte signature. It's amazing what they were able to figure out with that. But unfortunately, every Taproot address is based on what they call an internal key, or it is a public key, and having elliptic curve cryptography involved in address generation, I think, is problematic for Taproot. And if you want to hold coins long term against this potential new regime, we'll need to disable what the Keypath spend. So there's only the script path spend, and the script path, it's very interesting. The script path is very involved. There's an old proposal called MAST, and the idea is originally it was like it stood for Merkleized Abstract Syntax Tree, Computer scientists understand this as basically like a data structure used for describing code, essentially. And so it'd be a way to like, originally I think it was an opcode for Bitcoin script, and it would allow you to essentially elide or omit parts of the script that you didn't need to so like let's say you had like a branching conditional in the script, in the locking script being Bitcoin script being like the contract language that's in the script hub key, the output. And actually you can have it in the witness as well, inputs, what they call the script seg, but or witness, but yeah, there's also the script in Bitcoin. It's pretty cool, but it's also quite limited, for good reason, I think. I mean, for a long time, I think the small blockers were pretty correct about their approach. But then again, you know, I work with my supervisor. His name is Mike Casey. He's a notorious big blocker, and he's not very vocal about his opinion on big blocks. But he's been working on me for the past year that I've been working with him, and he's convinced me of a few big blocker arguments. Maybe the big blockers were right, but ultimately Bitcoin doesn't work that way. And so we decided that as a community we would try to scale with layers, and I think that's a perfectly fine approach. One of the complications of post-quantum cryptography is that it's larger signature sizes generally, and sometimes even larger public key sizes, especially in the case of MLDSA. Not necessarily the case in Sphinx. Sphinx keys are like 32 bytes. But unfortunately, sorry. Yeah, I actually traveled with an illness, and so trying to medicate. But it's funny. I was working with a company called Bitvault, and so there's his name is Francesco Madonna, and he's actually a physician by training, and so it's very convenient because he when we met, he had a bunch of medicine for me, and it was good. Yeah,
he's a great guy.
He is a great guy, yeah, for sure, and very popular here, and really crushing it with that project here in Lugano. It's really cool to see everybody just come up to him, and everybody loves him, yeah. And so yeah, I'm involved in Bitvault. I'm involved in Andro. Andro is a sidechain platform that's incubated by Mira, and so we're essentially working on. We have a signet now, actually, for a 5060 prototype. It's not fully finished yet, but because like one of the next things we want to add is post-quantum cryptography, and so I feel like I've been talking a lot. Do you have any questions?
I have a lot, but like I found it very interesting.
Yeah.
And I think the most interesting part for me is the quantum computing stuff, because this is one thing that comes up quite a lot, actually. If you think about what comes up against Bitcoin from other people, it's from very uninformed people that comes to like the environmental thing, or that comes like, oh, like it's just like digital, so like it's controlled by the CIA, like lately on Twitter, and so there's a lot of like weird things. And one of the arguments that comes up quite often, I would say, is the quantum computing stuff. And so maybe before that, like maybe let's make a little bit of an overview. What is even quantum computing, and like why does it pose a threat towards Bitcoin? Like what is like the threat level there?
Yeah, quantum computing essentially is Richard Feynman, when he I think he wrote a paper on it in 1982, and he basically described it as a way to make use of physics in computation. And what's interesting is you can make use of things like interference patterns to constructively interfere with numbers that would sort of so there's something called Hilbert space where you can essentially encode, say, a public key in. I'm probably explaining this really badly because I'm not a quantum physicist, but I'm much more familiar with the other side of it, which is post-quantum cryptography. But regardless, the way I would explain it is that a quantum computer, when usually they're super cooled, they have to be cooled very cold, and they have qubits, quantum bits, and they can encode the public key in some set of registers, and then you have some other working memory. And Shor's algorithms came out in 1993 or 95 or so, and it was the first instance that we had of a algorithm that could demonstrate quantum advantage. And there are like maybe more trivial problems that quantum computers can solve now. Google Willow demonstrated one recently that they say demonstrates quantum advantage, and that's cool. But Shor's algorithm is probably like the smallest non-trivial circuit that can be run on a quantum computer, in my opinion. I mean, this is just what I've seen. There might be others, but I think there's, of course, like Hello World in a quantum computer is basically like a quantum random number generator. You put a Hadamard gate, and then you have a CNOT gate, and then you can get perfect entropy, but perfectly random numbers from just the noise and the quantum realm. But Shor's algorithm is interesting because essentially, like, it uses a quantum Fourier transform. So it's basically a way to find patterns, and they call it periodicity. Something involving prime numbers, and anyway, it can use that along with what they call a modular arithmetic oracle, and that's also a deep problem that's still somewhat unsolved, I think. But once they're able to solve it, I think it just requires more gate depth and, of course, lower noise, and so or more error correction codes. But noise is a problem with quantum computing. But basically, you can solve that either with error correction codes or post-processing, some combination of the two, maybe. And so it's all just like, at this point, it feels more of an engineering problem than anything, and like it's just a balance of the right software and the right hardware. And the NSA has been working on this problem for a long time, it turns out. In 2013, Edward Snowden leaked the existence of a secret project that the NSA had for creating basically what we would call nowadays a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. In 2013, they were spending $80 million on this program. They were working with the University of Maryland, and also maybe like one or two other defense contractors like Raytheon and Honeywell are top candidates for what they were doing. And nowadays they're spending way more, and I think the Chinese is spending even more than us in the United States, and so it's kind of like a bit of a race. It's it's concerning because the NSA seems clearly concerned about the problem they caused, and then they also recommend and work with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST. They work with them to establish cryptography standards, and so like as a Bitcoiner, it looks like on one hand, you know, the NSA caused a problem by creating this spooky technology that only they can run. Like these machines are billions of dollars to develop and millions of dollars to maintain. They have they require like two special kinds of coolant: liquid helium and liquid nitrogen, and they're usually situated with like large cryogenic equipment. So one place they co-locate with is Fermilab in Chicago. They're kind of like the American CERN, and so they have like particle accelerators and that sort of thing. But then, like, in order to operate those, they need cryogenic equipment. And there's a company called Psyquantum, and they're working on optical computers that. But the thing is, with the optical computers, the optical part can be room temperature maybe, but the detector still needs to be chilled. And so, yeah, they're working on pretty advanced designs. They have some really interesting developments. I think something like, I forget all the figures for their blueprint stuff now, but it looks pretty good, and I think it might be adequate, like enough to break what Bitcoin uses, the elliptic cryptography algorithm that's called SecP 256K1, and came out in 2000. And around that time, also, cryptographers were pretty aware that elliptic cryptography could be broken by quantum computers someday by Shor's algorithm. And so there's a possibility Satoshi was aware of this. And it's interesting, and from the very first Bitcoin client, even in Bitcoin 0.1, he designed it in such a way that, although if you were receiving a payment, you would receive to like a one address or pay to public key hash, mining rewards would actually go to public keys, like directly to it's just like an actual SecP256K1 65-byte full public key. And that's an interesting decision, because in hindsight, what that means is that 1.7 million Bitcoin spread out across 34,000 addresses or keys. Ava Chow hates it when I call them addresses. She's like, no, those are keys. Okay. Well, regardless, they're about an average balance of 50 Bitcoin each, and it's interesting because, like, right now, even if a quantum computer was capable of taking those coins, I don't think it would be economical, even at 50 Bitcoin. Like these computers are just so like crazy, you know. And then you know, so I spoke to the CEO of Psyquantum and I asked him, like, what would keep you from, you know, using your quantum computer against Bitcoin? He says, well, we have government contracts and we wouldn't want to jeopardize those. And that's a nice answer. That's really cute. But what if the government paid you to attack Bitcoin? I didn't think to ask him that question at the time, but it's just a question that lingers in my head now. I'm just like, Anyway, we have solutions. We've been looking into post-quantum cryptography a lot for BIP360. We're not including it directly in BIP360. BIP360 only, it's very specific. All it does is it creates a new address output type similar to Taproot, except it just disables the keypath spend, and there's only script path spends now. And then you commit directly to what they call the Merkle root. And so, as I was talking about the Merkleized AST, modern Taproot implementation, well, I mean, like Taproot essentially took the old MAST idea and they kind of, in my opinion, kind of bastardized it. You commit to complete scripts, but you create like a Merkle tree of them, and so we call them tap leaves, and it's a binary tree, and but it's a binary Merkle tree, and so what that a Merkle tree is just like it means that there's like a hash. It's like every layer of the tree is hashed, and depends on the leaves below it. And so what's interesting is when you go to spend a tap leaf, you need to provide the if there is another alternate like branch in the tree, then you need to provide what they call the alternate script. And so now now we call it the Merkleized alternative script tree, and that's kind of like the new backronym, let's call it that, for MAST. And basically you pick like amongst any number of scripts that are already committed to in that tree that you want to spend from. And so what's neat is that you can decide if you had like coins in a BIP360 address, which we demonstrated in a workshop last week at TabConf. It went really well. I had my whole team there. It was really cool. And but when you go to spend the coins in those addresses, you can pick a tap leaf that says like, oh, I want to spend only elliptic cryptography, or I want to spend from post-quantum cryptography. I could pick a number of algorithms that I might have generated in advance. Could be SLH DSA or MLDSA. I'm working closely right now with Ethan and a guy, his name is Conduition, and also Alalu Osuntukun, also known as Roast Beef from Lightning Labs. He's been doing a deep dive into Sphinx, and so we're all trying to solve this problem. And we'll have a BIP hopefully for SLH DSA. SLH DSA and MLDSA are both recommended by NIST, which is kind of like a red flag for many Bitcoiners. I get that. We're very skeptical of whatever the NSA and NIST tells us. I mean, NSA and the NIST, they're both glued to the hip. No cryptography gets recommended by NIST that doesn't also go through NSA approval process. And so I can see why that's pretty suspicious, because like the NSA like caused a problem, and then they gave us the cryptography to solve it. Interesting. But what's interesting also is that there's a variant of Sphinx. So Sphinx so Sphinx is SLH DSA, and MLDSA is crystals to lithium. Crystals to lithium is special like lattice-based cryptography, and so lattice cryptography is just it's like all forms of cryptography. We're just trying to create a problem we think would be very difficult for computers to solve, and lattice cryptography is based on what's called the shortest vector problem, and so whereas like elliptic cryptography uses the discrete log problem. I won't go into like how those things work because that's very academic. But Sphinx, on the other hand, it uses hash-based cryptography, and hashes are quantum resistant. Like that's why public key hash, is not something we think of as vulnerable to Shor's algorithm. It could be vulnerable to Grover's algorithm, but Grover's algorithm is not a I don't think that's going to be a concern for a very long time. I could be wrong, like this technology could get very advanced within our lifetimes, but for now I think the near term threat is Shor's because of the way it scales. And so Sphinx, it's hash based, and so what's interesting is that there's a variant of Sphinx that most common implementations use SHA-3. It's not really used in Bitcoin Core. There is like a tiny implementation of SHA-3 in Bitcoin Core technically, but with hash-based cryptography, you can also base that on SHA-2. And SHA-2s are extensively used in Bitcoin Core. And so if you trust that SHA-2 works well and is secure, then we should, I think, base Bitcoin's implementation on SHA-2. And what's interesting, I might add an interesting note for like most Bitcoiners to appreciate, is that the NSA does not recommend SHA-2. They're not hot on it at all. which is weird to me. Like they might have made just something like so good, you know, like, and so we're kind of like going a little bit off of the beaten path with SLXDSA, at least as defined for Bitcoin. But I think that's the appropriate way to go. And what that does is that results in transactions that are about 1 or 2 kilobytes. What's nice is that we can put the signature in the witness, so that gets a 4x discount. But yes, it can be quite large. It would limit Bitcoin's TPS to maybe, you know, like right now we enjoy maybe 3 or 4 or 5,000 transactions per block. This might make it max out more like at most 1,000 transactions per block. Probably a lot less, because you know you can have multiple signatures in a transaction. And but regardless, like what this will probably result in is like blocks that are closer to the 4 megabyte limit as established by SegWit in 2017, and as it gets adopted. And that's interesting, and that'll be like I think that's like a good first step for like having a gold standard for having safe place to put your coins, even if it is more expensive to spend. Right now, that's not too big of an issue because, you know, we call it subset summer. I don't know if you've seen the mempool recently, but it's pretty, you know, pretty cheap to transact on chain. So, yeah. So we got to solve one problem at a time, in my opinion, you know. And so BIP60, maybe SLHDSA, and then we'll have to figure out how to scale that. And there's a couple other ways to scale. There's, but yeah, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I feel like I've answered your question.
Yeah, and beyond.
Yeah.
But it is so interesting because we like, I think in the heads of a lot of people, there is this moment where all of a sudden, like on one day, quantum computing is turned on and we figured it out, and all of a sudden, like everything breaks, which I like, from what I understand, is kind of like not entirely the case.
Yeah, like it's almost like a bit of a what do you call it, what's the term? It's like the imitation game. It's like with Alan Turing, you know, like when he broke the Enigma code, the British military didn't want to, like, they didn't want to let people know that they broke it, and so even like sacrificed ships with thousands of sailors in situations where they knew in advance that, like, there would be an attack, and those people lost their lives because the British intelligence, they were like, well, I have to conceal the fact that we have completely broken this code, and so we can't let them think that, you know, and it did arguably turn the tide of the war, but still, there was like a game theory behind how they sort of were able to capitalize on that information asymmetry. And there's nothing more asymmetric than a quantum computer. Quantum computers are not sovereign computers. They're not something that you can just don't trust, verify, right? That's unfortunately, yeah, that's just how it is.
I also found it interesting what you said in the beginning, where you said it's not economically viable to break it up because the Bitcoin that you will get from that is not for the cost that you would need to run the computers and like to acquire the computers and all of that, which is an interesting argument I've never looked at. With like it's not it's not a MacBook that you pay for 1,000 euros and like you plug it in and all of a sudden like, oh, like now I got them. And so it's like the economically viable. Is that also like with the growing market cap of Bitcoin and the growing price of Bitcoin, that like the threat also gets closer of like breaking those things?
Maybe. I mean, I think the market cap is largely a function of the problems we're able to solve, and so as we solve more problems in Bitcoin, such as like its utility, scalability, Lightning is a great example of that. You know, actually, it's not a great example in my opinion now that I think about it, because there's only about 5,000 Bitcoin locked up in the Lightning Network even now, which is interesting. Doesn't compare to wrapped Bitcoin or even like Taproot adoption. So that's a whole another thing. But that said, I think there's a lot of capital that is sitting on the sidelines that is not being invested in Bitcoin right now because there's this ever-present threat that, I mean, even like in 2012, there was a thread on Bitcoin Talk where they were talking about this problem, and like it's been probably the most salient FUD that's hung over Bitcoin in this whole time. Like you mentioned like the environmental issue earlier. I think DS Batten, for example, has done a great job, a fantastic job of diffusing all of that. Andrew Bailey as well, and just like just basically like Morat Al, like the environmental arguments, like they're just so flawed, and nobody brings them up anymore now because it's quite clear that actually Bitcoin mining is very beneficial for the electrical grid, and Gridless in Africa actually is doing great work on that on solving that problem, for basically solving like almost like a chicken and the egg problem. Like what's cool about what I love about proof of work is that it basically establishes a direct correlation between energy and value. It's like the sci-fi energy money that like we read about sometimes in like old sci-fi books, and it's by establishing this link, we sort of have a monetary incentive to produce more energy than we need, and so when it's truly needed by people rather than ASIC miners, such as in cases like in Texas when they have like a grid failure, there's like winter storms, or during the summer the Bitcoin miners will shut off, and they will return the energy to the grid, and it will be made available to the people who really need it. And they have monetary incentive to do that because of demand response agreements, and it's amazing. It just aligns incentives. And so the environmental argument, I think, is done. And also like even like e-waste, right? Like we have I have an S9 that I still use. It's not necessarily profitable, but I use it for heating, and we changed out the fans for Noctuas, and it's a great heater. And I send the hash to my landlord, actually. Yeah. And so whereas like the quantum FUD is, I think, probably like one of the bigger glaring issues of our time, and hopefully once we solve it, then that just unlocks Bitcoin to be at least as valuable as gold, because gold does not have this problem and has a much higher market cap. The problem gold has, obviously, I think, is which we'll also probably see in our lifetimes, is asteroid mining. And so, like Elon Musk, he demonstrated a fully reusable rocket just a couple weeks ago, and it went off flawlessly. It's amazing. It's amazing technology they're building, and that's gonna they already launched 90% of the payload in orbit anyway, and so I think like asteroid mining will be a very real existential threat to gold, and there are two companies actively working on this technology. There's Transastro and Astroforge, and so I'm watching them very closely as a Bitcoiner. Yeah.
The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I finally and officially mine Bitcoin. This is not just something to stack more Satoshis, but it's most importantly also to support the network. Individual miners are the ones that keep the Bitcoin network decentralized. And by the way, you get KYC-free Bitcoin. That's why I use Simple Mining. I get an actual proper Bitcoin miner. They set it up for me. They repair it if it breaks down. And most importantly, they let me choose the pool and even connect my own full node. I'm completely sovereign and I'm completely in control, and I can sign up with Ocean, no account needed. I just give them a Bitcoin address and then there's mining going on. No KYC, nothing. So if you're ready to mine Bitcoin, go to simplemining.io, tell them you come from Robin, and let's mine Bitcoin together. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need.
Yeah, the gold comparison is always interesting. I actually like a gold versus Bitcoin debate was my orange pilling moment, where I kind of wanted to get into this. And this was my first Bitcoin video, was a gold versus Bitcoin debate. It was Peter Schiff with, I think, Eric Forhas, I think it was. It was a really fun video. It was always like the problem they're describing really well. Like Peter Schiff also like describes the problem of field really well. And then
there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of common ground between Bitcoiners and gold bugs. And
that's why you see, like, for example, Larry Lepard was a gold bug, and now he's into Bitcoin, and now he is fighting with the gold bugs into Bitcoin. That's really fun. And this is a really fun thing also. But it's just like when you compare it to, like, there's like nothing going for gold outside of like it's very old. Like it has a very long track record. That's the only real argument for gold at that point.
Well, I mean, it's old. It's old as a. I mean, it's a good argument in that, like, you know, there's the Lindy effect, right? Yeah, if it's been around for a while, it's probably going to be around for a while. It's just until it's not, right? There's also, like, you know, a technological disruption aspect in things, and so ultimately it's a commodity money, and it can be debased by the abundance of the cosmos.
Just one more question on the. And this is like maybe a bigger question, because you followed like 100% like core versus Knots thing, and it's really interesting for me how emotional it is, and like how big it is.
It is so. It's been a soul sucking debate, I have to admit, soul crushing even. Spiritually, like, just so difficult to engage with sometimes, demotivating even. But yeah, it sucks. But and I've lost a lot of friends in the Bitcoin community. I used to be, I would say, like, pretty closely aligned with Giacomo Zucco here in Lugano. But after this debate, you know, we're all calling each other dishonest and liars and talking past each other, and sad. It's very sad. But you know, look, I mean. I get where they're coming from. I understand, like, you know, we need to focus on the monetary use case because, like, Bitcoin is the lifeboat, right? Like, as an American, I see Trump has, you know, signed the One Big Beautiful Bill, what he calls it. It locks us in for $2 trillion of deficit spending over the next decade. We're already at $38 trillion, takes us, like, closer to more, like, $60 trillion. And of those $2 trillion of deficit spending, we're spending $1 trillion on debt payments. So we're basically paying debt with more debt, which is unsustainable. And so, like, we're probably well on track for probably like doubling our debt within the next decade, and that coincides also with the solvency of entitlement programs like Social Security and Medicaid, and those will be, if the U.S. government ever were to go back on those social contracts, right? Like that would be a breakdown in like the American social contract, and like I mean we're already seeing like a little taste of that with the government shutdown right now, and
are they still shut down?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's very unfortunate. Yeah, it's very dysfunctional. The whole fiat system is just incredibly dysfunctional when you come down to it. But what's nice about Bitcoin is that tectonics block. You know, it's our lifeboat, and that's why I dedicated my career to working on Bitcoin. And yes, I think it's also one of the biggest problems of our time, which is the problem caused by central banking. Inflation is the most regressive tax there is, in that the poor can least afford it, and it's essentially like monetary expansion and the price inflation that results from it. Essentially, is take from the poor and give to the rich program, because like the rich, they can take as many loans as they want against hard assets they own, and so they're having a great time. And then the rest of us, like, we're trying to like afford food, and so it's I think it's only going to get worse, obviously, and eventually it'll get to the point where I think that the lifeboat analogy is really selling, because what people will see is a sinking ship, the fiat system, and they'll see these lifeboats. They'll blame the lifeboats and not the iceberg that caused this whole problem, right? And so that's a little further out problem that I think people who are working on like the Bitcoin citadels on the various parts of the world, those people are doing important work also, because I think there will be a period of time where there will be a substantial amount of social change and just cognitive dissonance as people begin to realize that like it's similar to like the situation outlined in the Mandibles. It's the book. It's I worry it's going to be very chaotic. I'm actually reading a book now called When Money Dies. It's about,
I heard about that.
Yeah, it's about the essentially Weimar Germany and the hyperinflation that that led to the rise of Hitler, and that's what happens when like you have a very it causes a lot of anger, a lot of turmoil, and it's very I would say scary to think about, to put your head in that space. And I just have to, every time I think about it, I have to come back to the fact that we have Bitcoin, and that is like that's the what they call the orange pill. It's like if I didn't have Bitcoin, first of all, I wouldn't give myself permission to learn about these things, because I would be so hopeless. I'd be so black-pilled, and the best cure to that is the orange pill. So
I love that analogy. I want to bring it just quickly back, because like I wanted to allude to another question, because I was kind of wondering now, like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't feel like Opreturn is that huge of a topic that it was made out to be.
What's so ironic about Opreturn is that it is the least like resource intensive way to use Bitcoin. Like, it doesn't go into the UTXO SATA database, which is checked on every Bitcoin transaction, because that's how we prevent double spends. So it doesn't go into there. It doesn't use that. It doesn't benefit from a witness discount. And so it actually displaces more denser transactions. So they reduce chain bloat. They're kind of like, a net win for Bitcoin, I think, aside from the fact that they don't, really contribute to the monetary use case unless they're used for, say, scaling layers, commitments, but or merge mining or something. But It's such like a, in my opinion, like such a like for people who really get Bitcoin, like understand how Bitcoin works, it doesn't seem like a big deal because, there's the not only is it the least resource intensive way to use Bitcoin, least harmful to node runners, right? Then but also it's just a matter, like the distinction between knots and core is that it's just relay policy, or what knots people call the filters, right? This is just relay policy. It's what your personal mempool looks like. It doesn't affect what goes in on chain. That all goes to miners, and so it's just like the difference between relay policy and consensus is enormous. It might as well not even exist, in my opinion. So I'm a fan of Libre Relay because it's kind of Peter Todd's implementation of like a fork of core, and because it just it takes the logic to for this logical conclusion, which is that for lack of a better way of putting it, relay policy is just fake and gay. It's not like a real thing. It's your own personal, mempool, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything, in my opinion. And there are lots of arguments about this. We go back and forth. It's a constant thing. Like, do filters work, right? Like, in my opinion, they don't matter. The only thing that matters are fees. Fees are the best filter.
I see that the same way, and that's why I kind of wanted to ask there's a small issue and we are debating it so hugely.
Yeah.
Do you see a risk that if there's like a big issue of like implementing the quantum and like implementing other changes down the road, that we kind of get so separately, and it's like we are fighting so big on an issue that we cannot decide on something and don't really move on? Or like, is that? I
think it could be the most ironic outcome, actually, is that like, for example, like Chris Guida, he's a very vocal knots advocate, but we both agree that like we need BIP 360. It's I mean, it might be like the one thing where like Bitcoin is like, oh well, this is actually a very real threat and we need to rally around it and we need to do something, and I have faith that that's how things will turn out,
because it's a real threat, and like you can actually only choose like Bitcoin and not Bitcoin.
Right.
I mean, not so like Luke Dasher also so like save Bitcoin, which I strongly like disagree with. Like I always get really cautious if someone says, we need to do this change in order to save Bitcoin, because there's like very rare instances like where we really need to do something, and like this excuse is always used usually by shitcoiners. It's like, oh, like here I found a mistake with Bitcoin, buy my shitcoin. I mean, of course, like that's not what he's doing, but and it's very different. But
right.
I just get very weary about that. Like if someone like
every Bitcoiner should be worried about that. About like. The fact that there are any number of justifications for changing Bitcoin, adding more functionality to it, doing all sorts of things that could fundamentally alter the dynamics in game theory behind it that make it a $2.5 trillion asset. And so there's that. There's also the counter argument is that it could be worth more if we had more changes. Covenants are a good example of that, like BIP 119, right? But regardless, I think, and you said like quantum computer, like the threat somewhat feels real. It's not really real that yet. Really real, in my opinion. When it does become
like, is this like is it like a few years or like even like a few decades out?
It could be any of those options. It could happen never. It could happen. It could have already have happened, and people are just sitting on a bunch of keys. It's any of those possibilities, unfortunately.
Schrödinger.
Yeah. And so we have a feeling of expediency, and we hope to have something viable by either the end of the year, or maybe might bleed over into next year a little bit. But like Andro and we want to launch our federated sidechain platform that will have support of two of the three sidechains that we're going to be launching. Will have native support for post-quantum cryptography.
Is it just a matter of time till like old coins that don't get updated, like Satoshis that like never, they will be broken up?
Well, yeah. So this is an interesting argument that we have even internally. So there's Isabel and Mike Casey. They're kind of like the other two people I work with, and we have an even much larger team. I want to make sure Jeff and Andrew get credit for their work as well. But they're great people, developers that we have that are helping me spearhead these changes. But the thing with this argument, there's basically three camps. There's so Isabel often argues for the confiscation of those coins. The argument being that 1.7 million Bitcoin at least. Technically, it might be even closer to 6 million Bitcoin that are called to invulnerable, but the majority of those coins are in reused addresses, and so that problem is, I think, less of a problem because those addresses are also quite active. I think 90% of those have been spent within the past 6 months, and so if people have the keys for those coins, they'll move those coins to safe addresses, safe places to put them. If the threat manifests. So what do you do with these Satoshi's coins? Do we burn them? That's something that Isabel advocates for. Mike Casey and I have collaborated and worked on a solution called Hourglass, and so the idea is basically to limit the spend of those P2PK coins in some way, either like 1 Bitcoin per block or maybe just 1 spend per block. But regardless, it would like stretch out that problem so that the market could absorb that liquidity. There's you have a less impact on the markets, and so that would be one way to sort of like be in the middle ground between confiscation and full liquidation. I'm of the opinion that the markets will eventually absorb it. The inflation will be transitory, to use a turn of phrase, and it'll be like a one-time event where there'll be cheap Bitcoin maybe for people who are like in maximum fear mode, I guess. But the coins will be essentially custodied by people with higher conviction, as it always happens, right? Like, I mean, Bitcoin has these cycles, the downturns, and all this, and I mean, like, people see like it loses $20,000 in a single day, and I'm like, well, I mean, that's I remember a time when that would have completely wiped out all of Bitcoin's value, and now it's it's still a thing. It's we get through this. Bitcoin is anti-fragile. I really truly think it's one of those things. I have the utmost faith in Bitcoin's capability to succeed and solve every problem that we have in front of us. That's why my entire net worth is in Bitcoin. I do not trust any other system more than Bitcoin, and that's also why I dedicated my career to understanding the problem that quantum computers pose to Bitcoin and how we might be able to prevent them.
It's so interesting because once you really go down a rabbit hole of seeing all other assets, seeing Bitcoin and what it is, as I also did, I just declared all my wealth in Bitcoin, and it's almost a logical conclusion. And if people ask me, oh, like isn't that risky? Isn't like don't you want to diversify and all of that? I'm like, if you have a boat that that will work, and then you have 3 other boats that are a little shittier than the one boat, are you putting your kids and your wife on other boats, like just so like one of the family it's like you put it all on the one boat that works and doesn't sink?
Yeah, diversification is I think not as salient, like a point when you have such a big paradigm changer as Bitcoin. Like it is the I think it's like we're coming to a complete fundamental shift in how we do finance as like a society, and Bitcoin is core to that, is fundamental. And yeah, there's no reason to be all in, not to be all in on it, in my opinion, other than the quantum threat. And we just need to solve for that, and that's fine. You know, don't have to worry about it.
One last topic I want to touch on is scaling Bitcoin with Lightning, with Fedimint, with like so many different like things that are going on. I feel like it's still like early because I use Bitcoin every single month. I mean, payment I, for example, do like on-chain transactions, and so like I do everything on-chain because, as you said, like it's super cheap. I send money to around the world and pay like $1 or like 70 cents or like maybe $2 for it. Like it's nothing compared to like the fiat system. You pay like $20 for the same thing. So right now it seems like early for like all those scaling solutions, but at some point like fees on Bitcoin on-chain will be coming up, and you're like, okay, like do I want to send $500 for a fee of $100 or $200? Probably not. How do you look at like Lightning, Fedimint, maybe other solutions, and like what are you kind of like seeing?
I love all the scaling layers that are being worked on. I think it's a very important problem for us to solve, and it is like it was like in some ways like a barrier to adoption in many ways in the past, and so once we solve for the quantum problem, then we'll need to solve for quantum scaling, which is even harder. I think maybe the best solution I can come up with for that is actually I didn't come up with it. It's Ethan Hallman. He came up with it. I called it Bitzip. He introduced it in the Bitcoin mailing list as like a way to scale post-quantum cryptography on Bitcoin using Stark proofs that are aggregated by miners. And so basically when a miner, they'll see like a bunch of transactions that come through, and they'll aggregate them into a Stark proof and commit to that for each block. And that would be, I think, the way we solve for that. It's just using Starks. It's kind of similar to what Ethereum is trying or has planned for their solution to the problem, but it's not automatic. I don't think it should be automatic. I think people should need to move their coins to quantum safe addresses, because in order for that to work, so the thing is, the Ethereum solution essentially is to commit to what are called BIP32 hierarchical deterministic wallet secrets that are kind of like further up the cryptography stack than what are used to the actual secrets used to generate the keys for addresses. And so if you can go further up, then you can commit to a secret deeper inside your wallet that isn't revealed or exposed on chain, and you can sort of like upgrade all the Ethereum addresses. But what they'll do, in doing that, they break anybody who has generated a Ethereum address that was generated like in isolation to a BIP32 wallet. So like anybody using MetaMask would be fine, but like certain like contract addresses won't be upgradable or spinnable or usable. They're like people with like old JSON keys will be completely screwed out of their ethers, and so that's something I don't think will map well to Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin should be like a voluntary thing. There shouldn't be confiscation built into the protocol. So I'm against burning, honestly, but like we've never done this, in like Ethereum has, we haven't, and so like I don't think the solution will work well for us. I think it would be better just to develop a new system that's opt-in and voluntary. People are proactive. People ultimately understand not your keys, not your coins. And the change that quantum computers ultimately introduce is just the fact that public keys become just as sensitive as private keys.
So many interesting topics in there, but I just saw like we already had like our 1 hour. I completely overlooked the time. It's so different in person. I did like maybe 20 or 30 episodes now in person, and I always see like those Joe Rogan episodes for like 4 or 5 hours, and I always ask like, how can I do that? In person, it's so much easier. It's like we're just getting started. But I asked one question to each and every one of my guests, and the question is usually like, what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin? I will add with you like quantum computing and cryptography. So like, what else could we learn from you?
So I have a blog, CryptoQuick.substack.com, and we post about BIP360 stuff all the time. But on there, I also a couple of years back, I wrote an essay where I wrote Bitcoin is a great filter, and I basically think I posed in this essay, Satoshi may have been an alien. And
not computer, by the way.
Yeah, well, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially if you think like, you know, there could be some civilization out there where they've been operating their monetary system in a way that's similar to Bitcoin, and they probably have been observing us for a long time and watching us make the same mistake over and over again. Michael Saylor, you know, he talks about how like throughout civilization we constantly just debasing the currency, and it results in societal collapse. And like the Roman Empire, right, is a great example of that. There's many examples in history. In our holiest biblical texts, you forbid, you know, usury or riba, right? You know. Just like debasing the currency, and they also have like debt jubilees and the kings. You know, it's just like it must be so frustrating for an independent observer who knows there's a better system to watching us making the same mistake over and over again, and for us to like finally have the technology in place to implement something like Bitcoin. You know, we just need to tie all the right pieces together in just the right way. Yeah, you know, maybe just send out an email to the cryptography mailing list under a pseudonym, and then I mean, of course, it also explains like why Satoshi seems so selfless. You know, like what human would be so selfless to create something as magnificent as Bitcoin, but then not spend their coins when it becomes adopted? I mean, what is Satoshi waiting for right now? You know, and I think it's just because, you know, he left, and you know, he said, you know, like, you know, and economy, if you'll have it, you know, and so or money, you know, and so I think, you know, the only other thing I would draw attention to, aside from like the quantum thread, I think, is just that I've been doing a lot of research into like basically the alien agenda, as Richard Dolan has written about. So it's interesting. I wrote in 2020, 2 books came out. Jeff Booth's Surprise of Tomorrow, fantastic book. Makes a very good case for like the deflationary effects of technology and how they might transform our economy, and that's really cool. Rich Dolan explains like some really interesting concepts in his book. Basically, how there's a high possibility that humanity has maybe 40,000 years ago had some like gene inserted that made us more creative. And he also theorizes that he goes over like thousands of reports from the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON, like abduction cases and things like that, and tries to find correlations in meta-analysis. And it's just fascinating, you know, like there might be, you know, other alien civilizations actually here on Earth already, and they have various, you know, motivations, I guess. And he thinks that we're all heading towards like a AI 5G totalitarian regime.
Yeah, awesome. We have an entry in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, what is the biggest industry that will be disrupted by Bitcoin outside of the financial one?
Wow. Oh, that question for me is easy, because I work for Mara. And Mara often has themselves not as like a Bitcoin miner or even like AI inference. It's they consider themselves an energy company because we have all these energy deals. And so I think the biggest industry that will be disrupted is the energy industry, utility.
I think so too, actually. And it's a really nice one. If you dive deep into Bitcoin, you're like, oh wait, like every energy producer will be a
Yeah.
Bitcoin miner,
Yeah.
and if not, they will get out of business.
Right, right, exactly.
And it's interesting because you already see it now that like Bitcoin miners get into the energy producing game, and it's just a natural thing because they have such a huge advantage over the energy producers that waste energy.
Right.
It's like that was a big one. I think I learned that like I don't know, like 8 months ago, something like that, and I was like, oh shit, like the energy.
Gridless is the company to watch.
Yeah.
In that regard, yeah, I think so.
And yeah, also we had also Daniel Batten already on. Like you mentioned, DS Batten, and so
Love that guy.
he's really great in like explaining that. And it has been a great podcast. Thank you so much for being on, Hunter. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask you questions, and also like kind of find all the resources that you provide?
You can learn more about BIP360 by going to BIP360.org, and you can also go to my website, CryptoQuick.com, and there's a bunch of links there too, and there's a Substack. Please sign up for that, CryptoQuick.substack.com.
Awesome. Then thank you so much, Hunter, for being on, and also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.
This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.